Okay, this is Coach Dez here. Next on the board, Washington versus the Buccaneers. This is also an impact game. It is going to be cold there. They're not used to this. Washington is, but the Buccaneers isn't. It's supposed to be 18 degrees when this game starts. So, is it going to be passing and rushing? I don't know. But let's just see what the outcome going to be. So let's talk about Washington. Washington offense. They average 31.9 runs per game. To the right, they have a 65.5% pass completion. Down the middle, 60.2% pass completion. To the left, at 69.3% pass completion. He's been sacked 55 times, 9 interceptions, and 19 forced fumbles on offense. Defense, on the other hand, gives up 28.8 runs per game. They are weak when it's passing down the middle at 62.8% pass completion they give up. They give up 54.4% pass completion to the right and 56.6% pass completion to the left. They've sacked the quarterback 45 times, 9 interceptions, and 23 forced fumbles on defense. The Buccaneers, on the other hand, offense, they average 29 runs per game. They're strong when it's passing to the right at 66% pass completion, 69.3% pass completion down the middle, and 72.1% pass completion to the left. He's been sacked 44 times, 16 interceptions, and 26 forced fumbles on offense. Defense, on the other hand, gives up 23.6 runs. They are weak when it's passing down the middle at 66.2% pass completion they give up. They give up 58% pass completion to the right and 69.9% pass completion to the left. They've sacked the quarterback 42 times, 9 interceptions, and 21 forced fumble along with 1 safety. Now, let's talk about these interceptions, fumbles, and sack. Okay? Because, see, Buccaneers are now coming together. They have now put all the pieces together. And they're playing like they're supposed to be playing. That is a team to be scared of right now. But, again, with this cold weather coming in, it's hard to say how they're going to play. So, let's talk about Washington averages 3 sacks, 3.2 sacks per game. 0.53 interceptions, and 1.1 fumble. Buccaneers average 2.6 sacks per game, 0.94 interceptions, and 1.5 fumbles. So we'll get into that and we'll talk about each one of those because Washington, you're already MVP. You're Rookie of the Year. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. You have 17 sacks in the second quarter. That's the most. Then you have 15 in the third quarter, 12 in the fourth quarter, and 11 in the first quarter. Interceptions, the most you have is 4 in the second quarter and 3 in the fourth quarter. Now, as far as fumbles, first, second, and third quarter is 5 fumbles each, and fourth quarter is 4 fumbles. So now, the Buccaneers, the most sacks is you have 14 sacks in the third quarter, and then 10 sacks in the second quarter, and then 12 sacks in the fourth quarter, along with 8 sacks in the first quarter. You have 10 interceptions in the second quarter. You have 12 interceptions in the fourth quarter, 6 in the second quarter. So let's talk about the rushing yards and all of that before we get into, we can go ahead and say, I do have Washington having 2 sacks in the second quarter, along with 1 fumble and 1 interception. Buccaneers will have a sack in the second quarter, along with 1 fumble and 1 interception. Washington will have a sack in the third quarter, along with the Buccaneers will have a sack in the third quarter. The Buccaneers will have a sack in the fourth quarter along with one fumble. So let's talk about these rushing and passing yards. Again, it's going to be cold. It may not affect the passing game unless the receivers drop the ball. But will they put up a total of 50 points? It's hard to say. I don't see it happening, but it could happen. So let's talk about Washington averages. In the first quarter, 7 carries for 33 yards. The Buccaneers is 7 carries for 30 yards. Washington averages 8 carries for 44 yards. Buccaneers average 7 carries for 35 yards. You know, I'm just rounding up, even though you see them in 0.5, whatever. It's just, I'm just going to round them up, okay? Washington in the third quarter averages 8 carries for 40 yards. Buccaneers average 6 carries for 31 yards. In the fourth quarter, Washington averages 9 carries for 36 yards. Buccaneers average 10 carries for 54 yards. So Washington is 32 carries for 153 yards. Buccaneers is 29 carries for 150 yards. So they're very close. For passing now, Washington for passing, they're 4 for 6 for 36 carries in the first quarter. Buccaneers is 6 for 9 for 65 for 65 yards. Second quarter, Washington is 6 for 9 for 65 yards. The Buccaneers is 7 for 11 for 81 yards. In the third quarter, the Washington is 5 for 8 for 55 yards. Buccaneers are 6 for 7 for 52 yards. In the fourth quarter, Washington is 7 for 10 for 77 yards. Buccaneers are 6 for 9 for 69 yards. So Washington is 22 for 33 for 233 yards. Buccaneers are 24 for 35 for 266 yards. So I think the total yards for this game, Washington will have 385.5 yards. Buccaneers will have a total of 416 yards. So now, what is this final score going to be? Well, let's look at this sheet. As you can see, here's the sacks, fumbles, and interceptions that I had posted. Washington and the Buccaneers. I think this game is going to be tied in the first quarter. It's maybe 7-7. Second quarter, it will be tied 7-7 or 10-10. So it could be 14-14 at halftime. As you can see, third quarter, it will be tied. Fourth quarter is so close, it will be tied. Look at the score. 28.5 points per average for Washington, 29.5 points average for the Buccaneers. I think this game will go into overtime. The Buccaneers will win this game in overtime. With that being said, peace out.